All right, now this is part two. And what I thank you so much because Tom was also there and he can say something. And people have to mute themselves because the way this works is that you can hear as long as people are not having a microphone. So the one thing I want to add about this research is that I had already talked to Robert Short. He's one of the only survivors of the Giant Rock group. And in those days, they used to talk to Corton on the radio, on the crystal
On
radio.
the ham, right? Crystal ham radio, correct.
The FBI made them stop. So when he talks through the throat, the being is talking through a crystal radio. It's not channeling. He's using the throat as a radio. That's why he said transmission starting, because those guys were speaking to them in crystal radio. And then I did some more research on the friendship case in Italy, and those guys talked to the ETs on crystal radio. So in those days, back in the 50s and 60s, you could make your own radio with all the parts. They were crystal parts, and you could transmit, and nobody could control it. So in the 50s, the contactees were talking directly to extraterrestrials, but the FBI was not happy about it and shut it all down. That's why Van Tassel and Robert Short had to, the ETs asked permission if they could use the vocal cords. And they said yes. And they used to speak. By the way, the Giant Rock group were 30,000 people. That's a lot of people in 1953, 54, and 55. And Tom, let's go to you because you shared a lot of what?
Could I just jump in one thing to piggyback on what you and David said? At Giant Rock, because I camped out there many, many times, right adjacent to the Giant Rock is a hill that is completely quartz crystal.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, right. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, Bill. That's perfect because
that's a great point, Bill.
Is part of the crystal radio. I mean, you use quartz crystal. You use it in outer space too, right? Because you do some space work. Yes, Bill.
Yes.
Okay, now Tom, you go ahead because you were there too with us doing all the Giant Rock and the Trinity. Go ahead.
Sure. Let me just say real quickly, I met Paula, I was just thinking back, it was sometime between 2010 and 2012. I was living in Scottsdale, Arizona. Paula had come down to speak at Phoenix MUFON. And I was just absolutely amazed at her level of professionalism, her devotion to research. She was the Barbara Walters of the field. And I was just super impressed. It was also her birthday, and Stacy Wright with MUFON Phoenix had Paula staying at her house. I was over there, and there was just a connection. And I asked Paula if I could work with her, and she said absolutely, and she meant it. It wasn't just lip service. She said, sure, let's do it. And one thing just led to another, and I was very busy at that time. I was working as an executive in the manufacturing field and a single dad. And there was just, I had a lot going on, but it was amazing that as I made time to do the work, great things happened. Possibilities would open for me to be able to go to travel. And in my job, I was already traveling quite a bit to Japan and Europe. And so, yeah.
And because your glasses have reflecting two picture frames in your glass.
Oh.
I think
I'll take them off.
Yeah, go ahead.
You'll be a little blurry, but that's okay. So anyway, I was just saying that it was really wonderful how circumstances opened up and really permitted me to be able to work with Paula. I was in Arizona, she was in Colorado, but there's so many things I can say here, so many experiences that we had that were so exciting and opened me up. Uh, like David was telling a little about his background and his past, I was always a very curious person. I was always curious about that which was just beyond our ability to grasp and to understand. Things that were a bit of a mystery, if you will. And I'd always had, not always, but for quite a while, I had had an intense curiosity about visitors coming here to this planet. I didn't doubt it for a second that it was possible. I just always felt that it was possible. And so anyway, Paola was able to help me personally on that journey as I supported her. And so I'll just real quickly, I'll just dive into Giant Rock with Robert Short and to corroborate what David was talking about with Robert as he was as Corton was speaking through him. I remember it reminded me of a light ash, what David was talking about that was falling, and it was I couldn't believe my eyes. It was like what's happening, and that was amazing. Again, that was in 2014, and here we are in 2014, and this Corton is talking about the future and future potentialities with Vladimir Putin. And it's really amazing to me how that kind of unfolded. I will add one thing that that really amazed me. I was there 2, maybe 3 times with Paola and with Robert, and we were standing by the giant rock, the big rock, and Robert looked out across this. It wasn't exactly a valley, but kind of a flat area, and there were big rocks and hills on the other side of it, and explained to me that there had once been an airstrip there, and just as casually as anything, he said that he one day he was standing in that spot, and Van Tassel was in his Jeep out on the airstrip, and a craft landed. A big ramp came down, and Van Tassel drove up the ramp into the craft. But he said it so casually. I mean, for him, he was reliving it in his mind. And that sort of eyewitness was the thing that I often found with Paola on the road. And it was just, to me, that was where I found the meat of the truth. And it was amazing. I'd like to talk real quickly, if I can, about another experience that we had together. Paola and I had the opportunity, or I had the opportunity to help Paola with an interview that she did with Veronica Paz-Wells, who was living just outside of Toronto. Paola and I got into a car and drove from Denver to Toronto. We stayed with former Defense Minister Paul, and had a wonderful visit with him. But this interview is something that I would highly encourage anyone to just get on Google or YouTube and look it up. It's a Veronica Paz-Wells interviewed by Paola Harris. In this interview, again, it was the content of the interviewee's story. It was the character. It was the secondhand nature with which they spoke, which caused there to be such credibility, such believability, and it was wonderful. Veronica Paz-Wells had been a part of a group from South America. She was originally from, I believe, from Brazil, and then she lived in.
Wait a minute. She's a brother of Sisto Paz. She's a transgender, and they were in Peru with the 10.
Peru.
Remember in the Chilca Desert, the 10 guys?
Yes.
And she's transgender. That caused us, we looked at her as a female, but it was the group from Peru. She went to live in Brazil afterwards because they started Rama. Go ahead.
Rama, yeah, and the interview was just incredible. she, at the end of that interview, she also said and talked about being in contact with someone who was from a planet called Apu, and it was really amazing. The message she received basically was, if you can accept a new world, if you can build it and accept it, you can have a new world, which really was interesting. Up well with what Colonel Corso said, a new world if you can take it. Um, but that was one of the most amazing experiences that we had. That was in 2016. And in 2016, this was, I think it was about April that we taped that interview. And she said at that time, she said that she had already been told that uh, November 2016 was going to make a huge difference in the direction that the world was going to take. And I'll just leave it at that. But as I've gone back and reviewed that material, uh, uh, I'm impressed at how accurate about had happened. I was looking another experience that I had, and that
Yeah, you're cutting in and out. So try and talk because you're cutting. Don't forget, you were with me at the Atacama Desert with Ricardo Gonzalez on 2 occasions, in the Atacama Desert and in Shasta, if you want to cover some of that. I don't know, maybe something happened to Tom because I noticed he was cutting in and out. He may come back on. Something might have happened to his transmission. But you were also with me in South America. Do you want to say a couple of words, Bill, and we'll wait for Tom to come back on?
Sure, thanks. So yeah, Paola and I were in Peru in May of 2019, and we were on a field investigation. There were 7 of us on international crew, and we went all over the country with Ricardo Gonzalez, and it was amazing to see the synchronicities of different cultures around the world, how they all share this same idea that their creation story is that we came from Pleiades, and about ETs. But basically, in Peru, one night, we were in northern Peru, right up against the tallest mountain in the Andes in Peru. It's called Mount Huascaran. It's 22,200 feet, massive. And we were already in a field at 8,200 feet, and it was at night. And we were all sitting in a semicircle, and I was at one end. And suddenly it was a clear sky at night, but then we had this flash, like heat lightning. That's what I would call it. But this was late fall in South America, so you shouldn't get heat lightning at that time. And then one of our tech guys who had, I think, Paula, like literally $200,000 worth of camera equipment, infrared, night vision, everything. So he was noticing this one cloud, and his night vision picked up that when we get these, there were 4 more flashes of heat lightning, I'll call it, but it wasn't heat lightning. And with the night vision, he could pierce the cloud and he could see like a kind of a horizontal lightning bolt, but on each end were luminous spheres. And at that time, I kept getting this weird feeling that something's behind me to my left, and I was at the end of the semicircle. And I just kind of brushed it off, nothing. And then again, I felt like someone was watching me. I looked again, and of course my head starts rationalizing, oh no, it's nothing. 3rd time, I'm like, okay, this is driving me crazy. I got up, I walked over to it, and there was a little grove of kind of sugar cane, about 6, 7 feet tall sugar cane. And I looked around it, nothing. Okay, I came and sat back down. And then Paula and another woman she's originally from Argentina, were looking in the same direction. And I think, Paula, you said, we're being watched. And I said, is it from over here where I just was? And she said, yes. And then Paula got up. She started walking over, and I could tell maybe Paula was a little apprehensive or something. So I just got up out of my chair. I put my arm around her. I said, I got your back. And we started walking towards that direction. And then two other people joined us. And then at one point, and this goes back to what you said, Paula, how like David at Giant Rock, everyone took photos, yet only David got the photos with the ship. So there were four of us now, and we're in this field, and now we're kind of up against this garden area, and past that is a tree line, forest. And Paula said what she saw was that forest just kind of lit up like a Christmas tree, and in one area. And what I saw was like probably a foot or so inside the tree line, and then another 6 feet up high, I saw this kind of very large, oval, kind of hazy gray energy of some kind. And then I saw probably like 6 feet up or so, these kind of two blue lights appear, which to me, it felt like an entity was starting to form of some kind. And then another gentleman came up from our group, and he took out his iPhone. And once that iPhone was turned on, the light emits from it, and poof, it was gone. But I guess my takeaway from that whole experience, a couple things, was one, that trust your feelings. Because in the beginning, my head started rationalizing, but my gut knew our bodies will never lie. And the ETs, I believe, communicate to us through feelings and through coincidences. As Einstein said, coincidences are God's way of being anonymous, staying anonymous. But so those were two really important lessons I got. And then that relates to the other sites, the investigations I did with Paula. Oh, and by the way, in Peru, the mountain, they call it Apu. And what Tom was just talking about, Veronica Paz-Wells talked about the Apunians, which Paula and Tom had an experience of in Shasta. So the indigenous people in Peru, when we talk to them, we're up at 14,000 feet. These people, they're just farmers, very simple, beautiful, beautiful, heart-centered people. But they would talk about, oh, these beings, these tall, huge beings, 10-foot tall beings would come out of the mountain sometimes, down to their village, and it fits right in what Paula and Tom talked about in Shasta. But as it relates to these other field investigations, and Paula, if you want me to stop, is Tom's back now?
Just want to add that
Yep.
more when I go to the Atacama Desert, in the desert, I get a feeling, and I was next to Sol, and I saw you go over to that spot, and I knew they were watching from that spot, and I said, better him than me. I just want to go. I thought, he's going over there. He's going to have an experience. That's fine. I don't need to go. And I was sitting, and I was sitting there, and I heard the words in my head, get up. Get up. Get up. I knew I had to go there because I'm trying to avoid it at all times, but I can't, because what they want to do is get your attention. And I'm glad you talked about the mountain of Huascaran and Yungay, because that's where the Apunian base is. That's where and Veronica knows that too, because in the Ricardo Gonzalez and in the Sisto Paz and his brother Charlie, who's Veronica, they met these beings that are giants, tall, 10-foot tall beings at Apu. But I just wanted to remind you, Bill, that, I was just so excited because you naturally knew where it was. I just didn't want to go there.
No.
I want to thank you for taking me to the spot where Adamski met Orthon. Thank you so much. where
welcome.
Orson put his shoes on the ground there, and where George Hunt Williamson did plaster casts of the shoes. People have just completely forgotten about Adamski, and that really did happen. It really did happen. And you also took me, if you want to talk about, to do one of the other giant rock guys, which is Orfeo Angelucci,
Right.
for Lockheed Martin. He was from New Jersey originally, but here's Van Tassel, who works for Douglas Aircraft, Angelucci, who works for Lockheed Martin. These are legitimate people in the 1930s.
Yep. Very, very intelligent men, highly credible, had careers that, they jeopardized by coming out. But one other thing, before I go to that, just one quick thing too, back to Peru. Another important lesson for me, which I apply to all my field investigations, is I think many times the ETs are like magicians. They give you a light show over here when really they're going to be behind you. So I learned that's an important thing when you're out doing it. Don't just be like a cat with a laser light and focus on that, because they're probably the other direction. But yes, so Paula and I, we went to Desert Center for George Adamski. We went to Howard Menger's High Point, New Jersey experience where Val Thor was. And we also visited Hyperion Bridge, which is literally right in the heart of Los Angeles. And it's on the Los Angeles River. And that was fascinating because Paula and I, and again, I'll talk about 3 coincidences that happened there. Always keep yourself open to your coincidences that happen and the feelings. So Paula and I were driving. It was July 16th, 2018. And now LA in the summer, it doesn't rain if you're not from LA, hardly, or maybe a light sprinkle once in a while. Paula and I, it's sunny, bright. As we get close to the bridge, the heavens open up and a torrential downpour just starts coming down. And before we got about a quarter mile from the off-ramp for the bridge, and suddenly it stopped and a huge rainbow appeared. It was stunning. And this is exactly what happened one of the times with Orfeo Angelucci. When you read the book, Secrets of the Saucers, I believe it is, he talks about that. So that was the first coincidence. Second one was we're there, and this is now probably 70 years ago when Orfeo had this experience. And what happened was he would basically go to this one bridge to find solace from work and other things. And at that time, it's not like now where it's so built up around it. And he would go there, and basically he walked down to the river where no one can see you because you're down in a gully, and it's an aqueduct. And he saw this light. And then he walked towards the light, and there was a spaceship. And this ET brother who looks just like us, his name was Neptune. And he met and talked to Neptune. And the thing is, all of these 1950s cases, which are so fascinating, they're all ETs that look like us, and they all say the same thing. Stop your war economy. You can have an amazing, abundant life without scarcity if you just change your ways. And they all say it. The same message. It's very simple. And they're no evil, scary monster aliens. They were just like us. So anyway, Paolo and I visited there, then we went down into where the river is, and it was so wild because, Paul, if you remember, I have literally driven prior to this film investigation by this site on Highway 5, which goes all the way through Canada, from Canada to San Diego and Mexico. It's a massive highway, and the river is right next to it. And I've driven 100 times by this spot, just thought it was nothing. We go down there, and it's this oasis, all this plant life. We'd have herons, there's other wild birds and animals, there's waterfalls. So it was amazing. And then when we started walking, we started hearing music, and looked around, we didn't see anything. And also in the book, Orfeo Angelucci talks about the music drew him to Neptune's ship another time when he was looking for him. And it ended up, there was this homeless woman who just had a little radio that we found. She was sitting kind of around the other side of the bridge. But it was amazing because Orfeo Angelucci and Neptune, when they would talk, Neptune would say, you humans think you're so highly advanced, the most advanced creatures in the universe, and it's the ultimate hubris because Neptune said you're just babes, and you have to be open to, and it's about raising consciousness, as David said, 100%. It's raising consciousness, and we are our saviors. They can help us if we're open to it and we ask for it, but we are the saviors of ourselves. It's not, we can't wait for them to save us. So that was the Orfeo Angelucci case, and it was great. And again, the lesson was trust my feelings when I'm follow your gut, your instinct when you're on these field investigations. Anything to add to that, Paula?
No, just just for the people who don't know, you should study Giant Rock because 30,000 people went there to listen to Howard Menger, George Adamski, Orfeo Angelucci, George Van Tassel, and so many more. It's just that I tried, it was too late, but I was trying to get the people that were still alive. So the only people we found were Robert and Shirley Short, who knew Van Tassel intimately, that because it was too late. It's 70 years later. And I'm grateful to you for helping me with Adamski, because you took me to the actual spot. And you might add that you are also helped Michel Zerger with his work with Adamski. And Michel Zerger lives in Tokyo.
Yeah, he's French. Yep.
Yeah, he's married to a woman from Tokyo. And you might add, so people know, that the ETs knew he was working on Adamski because of what happened. You actually went to the restaurant. I didn't know. You can tell them the story.
So I think some of the best books. Now, David just held up an amazing document that was can you talk, David, so they can focus? Just say something so the screen will be on you.
Yes, this is a commemorative that Robert Short put together, and it has the history of Giant Rock with all of the speakers, all of the contactees, the history, the police officer that saw, who was not a believer until he took pictures of a UFO there. I mean, these people met every year at Giant Rock to talk about their stories, and it's an amazing book. I don't know if it's still available, but do you have one of these, Bill?
I do, yeah. It's phenomenal. And then on top of that, and thank you. On top of that, if you folks want to learn about Giant Rock and about Adamski, I think the best source is Michel Zerger and his books. He is phenomenal. He is so thorough and assiduous in the details and verifying everything is accurate and no hyperbole. He's just very factual, states the case with intense research, photos, and documentation. But sorry, Paula, what was I going to talk about? Michel Zerger. Yes, his case. So Michel Zerger, he's a Frenchman who lives in Tokyo, and fascinating. His whole life is studying Adamski. And what happened twice to him, first time in Tokyo in a cafe, and he was sitting in a cafe with, I think, his wife, it was his girlfriend at that time. And this woman, she looked kind of Japanese, but she wasn't Japanese. She was giving him telepathic messages, and he was testing her. Well, if that's true, in his mind, he's saying, I'm improvising, but he said something like, take your index finger and scratch your nose. And of course,
that was tell him about the blonde guy, because that was
okay.
Good in London.
So when Michel was in a bar with one of his French friends in Tokyo, and they're speaking French, and in walks this gentleman, blonde hair, like Swedish looking guy, and he sits down right next to them. And in one of Michel's books, the title is We Are Here. And this guy, who's, again, looks like this Scandinavian guy in Tokyo, it's all Japanese. I lived in Japan for 7 years. You're 99% surrounded by Japanese people. And this guy walks in. These two are speaking French. The guy sits down, he writes on a piece of paper in French, "We are here," passes it over to Michelle. And he looked like Orthon, who met George Adamski in Desert Center in 1952, had very long hair. This guy had very short cut hair, but his face was definitely, according to Michelle, that was him. That was Orthon. And then Orthon got up, left, and every time Michelle tries to follow him or this other woman who came to him, they walk out the door. He follows them out the door and gone. Poof. So fascinating.
And you got to go to the restaurant where that
Yes. Yeah.
was in Japan. And I met with you, but I wanted to know, but the lesson behind that, Bill, and other than they are here, visitors without passports, the lesson is that they know he's doing work on Adamski, and
Yes.
what it is saying, good job, we know you're working. And so this idea of good job, we know you're working, if we have Tom back, and I don't talk about it very much, but Tom was present at the second time I had an encounter in Shasta with Antarel, and his basic message to me was, if you will lead, we will match your efforts. But Tom, are you back? Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. That was a phenomenal world event, in my opinion. I mean, it was incredible. So, yeah, so, what happened in that particular case was, if I can just back up a little bit, Paula, about leading up to that, Paula had Ricardo Gonzalez and his team to Crestone, Colorado, and we had an opportunity to go up to this monument called a stupa. And while we were there doing a meditation, these people came in and they were right over our head. And Ricardo pointed them out. We could see it right above it. It was flashing green and red. Ricardo would say, move to the left. So I know you hear me. Now move to the right. And the thing would jump back to the right, back to the left. We had a tremendous experience. And Ricardo recorded some things at that time. And one of the things that he recorded was that Paola needed to be in Mount Shasta the following week. And I don't think Paola caught that message at that time. Crestone ended. We went back to Denver. I was in Denver as well at that time. And Paola and I were sitting having lunch. And I mentioned to her, I said, well, Ricardo said that they said you need to be in Shasta. They're expecting you. And she didn't remember that. All of a sudden, our phones went crazy. My cell phone was on the table. Paola's cell phone was on the table. They just started calling each other. The cell phones, I think it was like 30 times that the phones just kept calling each other. It was the most bizarre incident. So Paola said, we need to plan to go. So we did. We got in a car and we drove from Denver all the way to Mount Shasta. And we got there and they were doing kind of a meditation that night at Mount Shasta. It was fascinating. As we were doing that, again, these same two craft, like the one that we had seen in Crestone, came right overhead. I mean, just same lights. I mean, we're seeing this with our eyes. It was evening, but you could still see them, the lights flashing. And at that time, Ricardo said, he announced who it would be that would go with him down to a designated spot there outside of their camp in the woods. And Paola's name was called. And so in order to do that, we went out into this flat area and they did some chants and some meditation. And then that selected group walked on into the forest. One of those people was Paola. The rest of that group that had been there chanting and singing and meditating, they walked back to the camp. I hadn't been invited to go down to the woods, But I thought, I don't want to go back to the camp. I'm going to stay right here because I had kind of a clear view of where they were headed. I couldn't see beyond the trees that they were going to, but I could see at least that much. It was really interesting. I had a chair, a folding chair, and I sat there by myself. The area that they'd gone to had a faint bluish cast, a glow to it, and you could see little flickers of blue. I could see little flickers of blue. It was really fascinating. I waited. After some time, they came back. And if you don't mind my saying, Paula, Paula went into that experience in some degree of shock. I mean, it was very tough. It was a tough experience for her. When she came back, she was completely at ease, completely at peace. And then they told me, what it was they had seen, and it was truly mind-boggling. What else did you want me to talk about with that experience, Paula?
That you saw, this is the second experience. It was a hologram. And it was Antarel with the two other guys that I saw in the trees. It was like they projected a movie. And I was traumatized the whole time down there. Actually, I didn't even want to go to Shasta. If you remember, I said no to
Oh, I remember.
no. I said, I'm not going back to repeat that experience. I can't. I have PTSD. So when the phone started calling each other, I had no choice because you said, I'll drive you there. We drove there in one day, halfway across the United States. But yeah, and the fact that you didn't see exactly what happened, but you saw the atmosphere in that particular
Right.
and Ricardo and I were alone. The other 5 people were way over on the other side. When Ricardo and I were alone, we had the holographic projection with Antarel in the middle. And of course, he tried to talk to me, and I freaked myself out. I couldn't handle it. So it isn't that easy to have a contact. That's one of the reasons why when I was with Bill, I knew that there was something there, but I wasn't going to go there. I was just so happy Bill was going to go there and just do it. I was not going to have that again. I'm not saying that, I don't know how to say this to people. Contact is not easy because it shatters your view of reality. And you're not ready for that if you're a very stable person. Now, am I ready for that? I can only say that I went and practiced walking by myself in Devil's Tower, Wyoming, to get over the fear because I was so embarrassed by what happened to me in Shasta. I mean, I really was not very good. I was trembling, sweating. So I went to Devil's Tower, Wyoming to get over that fear. And my friends came after me. And the minute they touched me on the arm, I heard the music from Close Encounters. And there was nobody in the forest under Devil's Tower. Now, my career started with Devil's Tower. It started with Close Encounters. So do I think I got over that? Yeah, I did. And the music that came da 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 came out of this forest. So I think weird stuff has happened to me, but I don't concentrate on that. What I'm concentrating is, and I think Bill and David that does transcendental meditation with his wife, and Tom all agree that we did the data work, but the bottom line is consciousness raising of the planet. And could you just say, starting with David, what you wish for planet Earth as far as raising consciousness? Because you did the work. You did Trinity, you did Clifford Stone, you did Giant Rock, you did the work. And I did it with the other 2 guys too, but we all came to the same conclusion. David, do you want to just end with a couple of statements about consciousness and how people can do that? And then we'll go to Tom, and then we'll go to Bill.
I think starting a meditation program is the best way to raise your consciousness. Now, like you mentioned, I've been doing TM for many years, and it's really changed my life. And like I said, it's calming effects. So everything in life is easier, and it makes you more peaceful and more bliss. You know, it makes you feel blissful. And so, if there's not a TM center in your neighborhood, there's other types of meditation as well. But I highly recommend the TM because it's very effortless, and you do it twice a day for 20 minutes, and it's really calming, and it does really raise your consciousness. I don't know what I'd do without it, especially with all of the negative things happening in the world right now. It does ground you, and like Bill's book in the background, it helps you get ready for contact. The ETs want us, yes, the ETs want us to do more meditation, and which raises our consciousness, and it allows us to make contact.
Okay, go ahead, Bill, and I'll leave Tom for last. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think, again, as Ricardo said, when we see UFOs, it's really, it should act as a trigger to go inside, go inward, because that's where the peace is. Because we will create a better world by being at peace in ourselves, not fearing the truth, releasing fear, and being calm. Know yourself. And meditation for me is a great way to do that as well, as David said. And meditation, everyone has different ways. It could be being in a forest, just sitting. You know, you don't have to be afraid of, I got to learn a protocol, or just whatever feels right. But I think it's about raising your consciousness by knowing yourself, and in doing so, the world becomes a better place.
Okay, Tom, do you
Right, and I can concur with what both Bill and David said. The same. I meditate. I for some reason, it's been more important than ever since I've started this journey with Paola over the years for me to go inside. And I concur exactly with what they shared. Veronica Paz Wells was given the message that we are now at a point in our history for the first time ever where we have an opportunity to choose our path of the future for ourselves. And a big part of that starts with going within and basically the golden rule, do to others and others' families as you would have them to do to you. And that, she explained, causes this expansion of consciousness. Consciousness expands, it grows, our awareness grows. And the same thing, Ricardo said the same thing that I'm hearing here, and that is that on our in our excitement to find them, we only discover ourselves. And they all of the folks that I've worked with Paola, who've had this contact, have always said that it's a matter of finding ourselves, that no one wants to interfere, but they just want our growth. They just want to assist us as best they can to become more. But it starts with us, and it starts on the inside. It starts with the expansion of our consciousness.
Thank you. And thank you guys for working with me. I could never have done the work I've done without you. And I really miss you. And I hope that you can share what your experiences are with other people. So I'm going to leave it open for questions, but I'm going to stop the recording now.